Welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with under-the-radar folk musicians. I'm your host, Cindy Howes. And guess what? I am coming to you from my brand new studio in my new apartment in Somerville, Massachusetts. It's pretty exciting. I literally have been spending all morning setting this place up, decking it out with some soundproofing and hanging up some pictures and getting the lighting correctly and the heaters on. And my cat can be in the studio now. I don't know if we'll be able to hear her or not, but she is having a good time down by the heater. Anyways, today on Basic Folk, we're going to be talking to multi-instrumentalist and singer-songwriter Rachel Sumner of the band Twisted Pine. I'll let you know a little bit about what we get into, but first, let's thank our sponsors for Basic Folk. Okay, Basic Folk is supported by Lindsay Myers from LMNO Management, who suggests that if you like this podcast, you'd also like the band Tina and Her Pony. You can check them out on your preferred streaming platform or follow them at Tina and Her Pony on Facebook and Instagram. Rachel Sumner, it's kind of great that Rachel is on the podcast today. First of all, this is being released on Valentine's Day, so it's perfect timing. She has a new EP out with her fiance called Sing Me an Old Tune, and you can find that on Ian Fitzgerald and rachelsumner.bandcamp.com. Also, Rachel was the final interview I did at my basement studio in Pittsburgh at my house, which closed yesterday, so somebody else is taking over that house, so that's kind of symbolic. And also, it's the first episode being released while I'm a resident of Massachusetts, and Rachel, also a resident of Massachusetts. And it's kind of, fortuitous that it's all happening this way. And I'm getting very sentimental, but Rachel and I get into quite a bit here on Basic Folk. We talk about her upbringing in Lancaster, California, which is in Southern California, and the experience she had discovering the music scene around this club in Los Angeles called Largo, where people like Amy Mann and Sarah Watkins and the Watkins Family Hour and Gillian Welch perform pretty regularly and have this very thriving scene. And that kind of inspired her to really go for it. And we talk about her interest in classical music. Also, I get a little bit heady here with my questions. I'm going to leave them in just because I think they're interesting things to think about, but I think I came on really strong, and I sent Rachel some texts afterwards. I'm sorry I took over the conversation afterwards, but she's so cool. It was fine. Rachel is part of the bluegrass band Twisted Pine. Their latest album is an excellent covers release called Dreams, which we talk about a little bit. Rachel last fall released an EP called Anything Worth Doing, and it's different than a bluegrass album. There's some interesting layers on the EP that I really like, and it's interesting to think about how she wanted to pursue a career in film composing and had this classical music background as we take a listen to this song Shake and Shiver from Rachel Sumner, and then we'll get to our conversation with her on Basic Folk.
Wildflowers bloom before you, breaching the fist of winter's rule. I know they'll die so do you, 'cause winter is long and winter's cruel. All of this living just to lay our head down. All that is given, taken back the ground, the ground.
Hey, Rachel Sumner, thank you so much for coming on Basic Folk.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
I thought I'd start the interview talking about drive and discipline. So I read this quote from you that says, "Even though I am a trained musician, and the many ways I make a living are music-related, my primary disciplines are self-taught. I'm proud of the way I've been able to adapt and expand on my own abilities." So usually I think a lot of the qualities of a person come from their surroundings during formative years, like when you're younger. I'm not sure if you can agree with that or not, but can you talk about where your drive and discipline might have possibly come from?
Well, to begin with, I was a really precocious child growing up, and I wanted to know everything that I possibly could and do everything as well as I could. And that wasn't anything that like my parents pushed me toward. I was just like naturally curious. And I realized that was kind of the way out for me. I grew up in kind of a not so great environment with my family. So I realized that the way out was, through school, through music. And I kept pushing and pushing, and now I'm here.
I want to know more about your town, if you're comfortable talking about, is it Lancaster?
Yeah, Lancaster, California.
Southern California.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your growing up and what that was like? And, were you around a lot of music as a kid?
There's not a lot of music in the city itself, but my mom always had music playing. We would be singing in the car, like Everly Brothers was one of my first
cool.
musical experiences. My dad would go mountain biking down a specific hill, and we'd get to the top, and then he'd go and she'd quickly put in the Everly Brothers tape, and we'd sing all the way down to the bottom when we picked him up. And
that's a cool story.
Yeah. So that was kind of my introduction to folk. She was playing James Taylor a lot, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But yeah, there wasn't much going on in the city. It's a pretty dusty town. It's the desert. There are Joshua trees all around. It's technically part of Los Angeles County, but it's about an hour and a half away from the actual city, the proper city of LA.
And I also read that your mother and your grandmother were early supporters of you. Is that of your music?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom has always been there for me, and my grandma too. They've just really pushed me and tried to understand why I wanted to be a musician.
And they don't play?
My mom picked up violin, actually, after I had started playing the flute. She wanted to learn, and so she plays an orchestra, and she's really great. She's always progressing.
Oh, great. What do your parents do for a living?
So my mom works with special ed students, and my dad isn't in the picture anymore.
Okay, gotcha. So when did you come to the flute? Was it your first instrument?
Yeah, I came to the flute in 4th grade. They had like an instrument petting zoo. They start you off on flutophone, the recorder.
Oh, yeah. You put in a sock.
3rd grade. Yeah, I had a purple sock for that. And so once you pass the flutophone 3rd grade year, then you get to go to the instrument petting zoo, and you get to choose an instrument. And the 2 instruments I could make noise out of were the flute and the trumpet. And I came home just saying, "Mom, I want to play the trumpet." And she was like, "It's kind of loud. Why not the flute?" So I ended up playing the flute all throughout high school, and then that's what I went to Berklee for, actually.
So not to like jump all over the place here, but I wanted to know what it was like when you discovered the music scene at the Los Angeles club Largo.
Oh, yeah. That was, it was one of those moments where it's just so special, that nothing is going to be the same anymore. So I went and I saw the Watkins Family Hour, which was a monthly residency. They might still be doing it. Sean Watkins and Sarah Watkins from Nickel Creek. Nickel Creek was a big influence on me when I was younger.
Oh, yeah,
Alison Krauss and Nickel Creek were like the 2 albums that I had, and that was my foray into bluegrass. That was as bluegrass as I got at that age. And so once I graduated high school, I figured out how to use the internet and how to search for, what are they doing now? What's Nickel Creek doing now? And so I found out that they were playing in Los Angeles, and my mom and I went. and they had Chris Thiele come and sit in and on some stuff, and it just blew me away. They had Fiona Apple come in, John Bryan, a lot of these heavy hitters, and I couldn't speak the entire next day.
Oh my God.
I was just like kind of catatonic, but I knew that there was something going on, like something had changed, and I knew that life was never going to be the same for me.
Wow.
And I mean, it's kind of proved true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been?
I've been to Cafe Largo, which was the smaller place. I had a good friend who would play there a bunch, actually. I think he specifically moved to LA so that he could get in with that scene. Do you know Tom Brousseau?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. He was there that night, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually had a huge influence on me in terms of, like, music. And that's how I know Largo is through Tom.
Yeah.
And, like, I was so excited to see that you had a connection with it. That's an incredible story because it is a really, I mean, like the Los Angeles music scene, like Gillian Welch and Amy Mann are like local people, you know, and they all hang out at this pretty cool space. It's pretty special.
Back then, it was a little less known, I think. They do more comedy now these days, I think.
Yeah, like Paul F. Tompkins
is a
doing,
big one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and I think Largo is maybe how Amy Mann got so into comedy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. She's friends with like a lot of comics, I think, because of Largo.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the classical side of things. So you spent a year at Pasadena studying flute, and then Utah as a flute player studying classical composition and film scoring. And I don't want to like skip over those years. Is there anything extremely important that, you know, informed you as a person or a musician that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. When I moved to Utah, that was my first time being away from home, and it was just a very different environment. And I was exposed to a lot of music that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to if I hadn't moved. Well, maybe it would have come around, but I got really into Of Montreal and Sufjan Stevens, and those were like the big ones for me.
In Utah?
In Utah.
Not in Los Angeles.
No, not in Los Angeles. Surprisingly. But I don't know, I felt like Utah was kind of a hibernation for me as an artist. I didn't play guitar. I had a guitar and I was trying to pick out things, but I couldn't at that time. It felt like things were influencing me, and I feel like that's where everything was brewing.
On the guitar? Or
no, not so much on the guitar, just like influences, like folk influences, but also I was getting really into Bartók and
like classical.
Like
composer.
classical, yeah. And he does like extremely atonal music. Specifically, his string quartets were really interesting to me. And so Of Montreal and Bartók and Sufjan, like they're more extreme sides to them. That's what I was really interested in. And I definitely think that has informed what I am interested in these days and also what I write. But not, I don't think as extreme as that. Yeah.
Right. That's cool, though. That makes sense to me. So you were originally interested in classical composition and film scoring, and you wanted to work in Hollywood as a film composer?
Yeah, I actually wanted to be an orchestrator specifically.
So what's the difference between an orchestrator and composer?
Composers, they write the melodies. They do mock-ups, as I found out from, I was thinking John Williams, he sits there at his piano and he writes all the melodies by hand, right? Which, he did, and he does. And then he gives his sketches to orchestrators. It's usually just 2 lines, or two staffs, but all of the ideas are there. And generally he has an idea of, okay, this section is going to be more woodwind heavy and all that. And then the orchestrators, they know the orchestra in and out, and they're able to kind of set that.
They're the real heroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do all like the notation and stuff?
They do all the notation. There are copy editors that help with that too, but they know like, oh, this is in the range of a bassoon, or this probably would sound better.
So could you
with clarinet.
Could you do that? I don't know if you could do that today if you're out of practice, but like at one point could you like be John Williams orchestrator?
I studied it, but I don't think I could work for John Williams.
I really
would
wish
not.
you would have been like, yeah, I could have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, I can think through the sounds of the orchestra, and partially the reason why is because I was in orchestra for so long, and I can, like, you say bassoon, and I can hear that timbre. I just, and at that time, I did memorize, like, ranges, and I was really learning about, like, textures and stuff, but I was kind of disillusioned by the film industry. It was really disappointing.
You don't say.
Yeah.
I do not find that hard to believe.
Well, it was just really surprising, actually. Berklee was doing, like, a Berklee Goes to Hollywood spring break, and I was going out there to visit my family anyway, so I thought that I would participate. And it was cool. We got to go to Hans Zimmer's sprawling studio, remote control, and we met with one of his composers, because he's got a bunch of composers that he'll hand work out to, or direct other movies to that if he can't do it, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Outsource.
Yeah, outsource. There's the word.
Yeah.
And I remember, this was in 2012, I remember I went to this one meeting where we sat down with a couple composers who had gone to Berklee, and there was this woman, I can't remember her name for the life of me, and it's been eating at me, at my soul.
Oh, no.
But I think she's the reason why I decided not to be in the film scoring industry, because she laid it out pretty plain, and she explained very specific examples of sexism. And it was bad what she described, and at that point I thought, do I really want to push that hard to try to do what I want? Do I really care about film music that much that I want to subject myself to what I know will be a really difficult thing? And at that point I was starting to play guitar and write songs, and I thought, no, maybe that's not for me. I'm not the one to do that.
Wow. Great. Well, let's talk about the guitar. And so you had the guitar for a little while. You didn't connect with it, but tell me about, like, what it was like when you finally did connect with the guitar and how it changed you as a musician.
When I was at Berklee, I was hanging out with a lot of the roots people, and I would go to the parties that they would have, which were just like fiddle tune parties. People would bring their instruments, and it was really social and wonderful and lovely. And I would try to play flute, and it didn't quite work. So I borrowed a guitar from one of my friends, and he taught me the 3 chords that you needed for specifically for the tune Rebecca, which is like kind of a squirrely fiddle tune, because he wanted to practice soloing over it, and I wanted to practice just like learning how to play rhythm. So it
worked out.
Yeah, it was perfect. And from there I joined the bluegrass ensemble at Berklee, and that's where I met Molly Tuttle. Like, she was in the bluegrass ensemble with me, and John Mylander, and we worked up tunes and we started singing, and from that I started writing after I learned enough chords to...
You started writing your own songs.
Yeah.
Had you been writing poetry or anything like that before?
You know, I thought I didn't write poetry when I was younger, but I found some old journals.
Oh, I bet those are good. Did you bring them so we could read them?
No, they're so embarrassing.
No.
They're all about dolphins.
That sounds really good, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe you can show them to me later.
Maybe.
If I'm lucky. I understand you're really connected with bluegrass and the music of Bill Monroe. Mm-hmm. So tell me how you discovered his music, and what was it about the sadness and honesty that resonated with you?
I came to Bill Monroe by way of Hazel and Alice, and I came to them by way of Michael Daves. And Chris Thiele. That project kind of introduced me.
So Hazel Dickinson and Alice Gerrard, is that right?
Yeah, Hazel Dickens.
And,
yeah.
So those are like classic old time players.
Yeah.
Or bluegrass players.
Yeah, they came out of the DC area, and they were kind of the first. Not the first females in bluegrass, but they were really spearheading that movement. For sure. But when I heard Michael Daves sing, I was floored, and I wanted to know why he sounded like that, because I thought it was amazing. And so I traced back to Bill Monroe. I didn't have to go that far.
Yeah.
And then I just started to become obsessed with his older recordings. And there was just something... Well, I didn't have a very happy... I had a happy childhood, but I had some really unfortunate things happen in my family. So that sadness that he was expressing, I really, really was able to latch on to it. And just seeing how he used it as like a form of catharsis really interested me.
Yeah. So when you talk about how you connect to poetry, it sounds like the same connection that you felt, the sorrow that Bill Monroe expressed. And maybe it's like, because you said this, sometimes I find a really good poem that feels like a familiar or forgotten thought, something I thought about once but couldn't express myself. So like, it sounds like that was also Bill Monroe. Maybe not so much the lyrics, but the feeling you felt for him.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and also talking about your professor, Henry Tate, who was a curator at Boston's Museum of Fine Arts, the MFA. I loved that story about how he would try to like show you the connection between painting and writing music. Can you talk about what he did for you?
Yeah, Henry Tate. I just got chills just thinking about him. He was one of the most lovely teachers and influential teachers that I had at Berklee. And well, for starters, he was the reason why Berklee students get free admission to the MFA, which is such a treasure because there's so much in there, so much just to take in and think about. And so that alone is amazing. But his classes, he wouldn't even use he would use the projector. He wouldn't use the computer slideshow at all. It was slides that he took himself, and he was a Joyce expert. He did his PhD on like Finnegan's Wake, actually.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Like
but
James Joyce, right?
Yeah, James Joyce, yeah.
I was like, are we talking about the way that the wood connects? James
Joyce.
I'm here. Right there with you.
And he loved to talk about the time in France that Joyce was around and Picasso was around and Stravinsky was around, and he would talk about the soirees that would happen and the meetups in cafes and how they all influenced one another. And he would take us to the museum every other week. So, like, our class was in the museum.
And these are all, like, songwriters.
Yeah, all musicians. There are no... I mean, some people do visual art as well, but all musicians. And he wanted to make it interesting. He wanted to make it relevant because a lot of the time... it was easy to feel that it wasn't related, like the general courses at Berklee, like they're not so necessary to us. And he wanted to prove and did prove that no, this class is very useful to you because I'm going to show you how to take in a piece of art and like understand intention and creativity, and he knew that would influence our own music.
Did you also use the word when describing, like, you know, intention? Did he also use the word like the way that a painter like manipulates the viewer?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so interesting to think about. And he also must have like touched upon, because I've thought about this before and had discussions with musicians and songwriters before, and people who like listen to music for a living, that like, you know, somebody plays a song in a music meeting at my former radio station, and you know, the song, you know, I've heard a minute of the song, I'm like, all right, I've heard enough of this song, I feel manipulated. Like, it's too obvious. The manipulation is too obvious. Whereas like the Bar Brothers have a song called The Song That I Heard, which is like, or like Yesterday by Paul McCartney. Like, that's another good example of like, Paul McCartney is manipulating us to love the song, and it's so good. Like, he's so subtle and good at this manipulation, and I believe it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I don't know if there's no question there, but like, is that kind of like what he was getting at in terms of like, this is how this manipulation, maybe that's not a great word to use, but like,
Yeah, I can't think of like a more positive term, but
maybe we could think of one in just discussing this because it does seem rather negative.
Yeah, but you got that I didn't mean it in a negative
No,
way.
not in a negative way, but I like to like think of like, you kind of like, you're kind of, maybe this is too heady.
No.
Let's bring it back to earth.
I think suggestion is more powerful oftentimes.
Or like suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Is much better. That's a film term.
Yeah.
I don't know if you learned that term in your composer classes.
I think I did.
Anyways, I don't know what else we can draw from that conversation about manipulation. I wish we could think of a better word. Or convincing, I guess. Like, you have like a thought or a feeling.
Yeah.
And you want to convince somebody of it. But sometimes it works out better than others.
Yeah.
Okay, so as someone who wanted to like work behind the scenes as a film orchestrator, so you took a really dramatic turn into your career. Like maybe you would have never been on stage.
I had stage fright.
Right. Yes.
Such
so
bad stage
this is
fright.
want to hear about. I want you to talk about that transition from being like a faceless musician to one who's not only are you on stage, but you are a leader in one of your bands and a co-leader in another. Like, you're one of the primary focuses on stage.
Yeah, I'd still wonder that. I still scratch my head over that. It hits me every now and then. I was so convinced, my stage fright was so bad that I thought my role, I would be best backstage, and I was totally happy with that. Very, very content with that thought. Actually, at Largo, that kind of helped me break my stage fright bout because I saw John Bryan do one of his solo shows, and he's just, he plays everything, he loops everything. That was my first time seeing anybody loop something live. And
he's kind of like an odd duck.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone perform like him. And that was part of the thing that inspired me. He just he checked in with the audience at the beginning of the show, said, essentially, "Hi, everybody, I'm John Bryan. I'm going to play some songs for you." And then he didn't check in until the end of the show. He was just in his own bubble. And I thought, oh, that's key, is, owning and inhabiting your own space. I still think that's true. So once I learned about that, and once I thought more about that concept, I started feeling more comfortable. And I still don't understand why I did that. I'll probably be wondering years from now. Right. Honestly, but
well, that's great. It sounds like you really like intentionally try to enjoy yourself. Mm-hmm. Which when I don't get nervous anymore on the radio, but I definitely would like try to tell myself, enjoy yourself on the radio, and I'm like, no, I never could.
Yeah.
You are a live sound engineer at Club Passim. Are you still doing that?
Yeah.
Great. What has that experience been like for you?
Nothing but wonderful. I went in not knowing anything about a mixing board. And Matt Smith and Abby Altman and Dan Bowie, my bandmate who also works there, doing the same thing. They all taught me how to do it and how to set up for a band and mix them. And it was really empowering to demystify that part of the live music aspect. 'Cause I never understood. It felt like there was a wall between me as a performer and the sound engineer because I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And that would make me really nervous, and I'd feel really self-conscious. And once I learned the basics of that, and once I started feeling much more comfortable in that way, it helped my life as a performer a lot.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. So there was that. And then Passim, Club Passim is just one of the best places on earth, as you know.
Yeah, I used to do that. I used to run sound at Passim.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I found it to be a roller coaster of emotions.
Yes.
Particularly on open mic night.
Yeah, that's where they start you out.
Matt Smith called that sound engineer boot camp.
Yeah.
I had a great time. One time, like, it's so stressful, and also, like, I used to have like, before smartphones and before flip phones, I had like that Nokia brick, and I put it on the soundboard, and then somebody like called me. And so my ringer was off, but it still made that like metallic like noise over the speakers, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh gosh.
Oh, it's so many horrible memories of just hard times. Like, I am not a born sound engineer, but I will say the last time I did sound, it was for the Mammals,
Oh.
and Mike Miranda was so kind to me, and they each play like 17 different instruments.
Yeah.
And the show was sold out, and they wanted like 20 guest list spots, and I was like trying to figure it out. And then, I called Mike over to the soundboard and was like having like a tiny panic attack, and I was like, "Can you just help me label these these instruments?" And he was so cool. Anyways, a little tangent, but yeah, that's cool. So your band Twisted Pine formed at a really neat bluegrass community. Is this right? The Tuesday night bluegrass jams at the Cantab Lounge in Cambridge?
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if it's still like this, but it was like really pretty divey.
Yeah.
Is it still pretty divey?
Very.
Yeah. So what is that world like, and what did that connection to your bandmates feel like when you first came together?
Well, anything set in a divey bar is it's interesting. There's always characters that are attracted to that, and it's so much fun to constantly play with folks, like new folks who come into Boston and they want to visit. They've heard about the Cantab and they come to visit.
So like a tourist attraction, kind of?
Sometimes, like a low-key tourist attraction.
Oh, yeah.
Only musicians really know about it.
Yeah.
And it was also like, oh, who's going to be there this next week? The sort of who's who of Boston would kind of show up, and it was really cool meeting people that way, working on songs to be played at the Cantab. Twisted Pine, we essentially started with the residency, and the reason why we kept playing together, one of the reasons was just because we had this residency, and so we worked up new material all the time.
Can you just real quick explain, if people don't know what a residency is?
Yeah, so our residency, we would play once a month on a particular Tuesday. I think it was like the first Tuesday of every month, and we'd play at 8:30, the opening slot, So we would continue to work up material, and then from that we would get other gigs. Like, folks would be like, "Oh, I've got this coffee shop that I have," and that kind of fueled everything. And then we thought, oh, we can get more gigs this way, or get more gigs and be a band,
Yeah. So this is interesting. I wonder if you have an opinion about this. Like, I was listening to an interview with the band, and one of the guys, I don't know if it was Chris or Dan, was talking a little bit about hearing you and Kathleen sing your songs and hearing the different styles between the two of you. And I wonder if you could talk about being able to work so closely with a band and how that might help you get to know yourself as a musician versus like figuring out alone. Or, I mean, there must be positives to both of those experiences.
Yeah. One nice thing about being in a band is that you have 4 instruments that are going to be there. Well, in my case, I have four instruments that I know will be there. I limit myself to that. And I think, okay, well, what can I hear? What can I picture? And I work with that. So adding limitations is a really good way for me to avoid running in circles with an idea or becoming really frustrated.
Love that, running in circles?
If I'm feeling particularly masochistic, maybe. But yeah, I need that.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning of writing songs, I needed the courage that I would get from them, because this was like the first band I played guitar with. And they would teach me new chords. They would teach me new things all the time. And so I felt really comfortable with them. They're my friends. And in the beginning, I was really shy to bring my music to anyone, but it felt very natural to bring it to my friends, who wouldn't judge me for it and who would only build it up and make it better.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder also if, you might think of yourself as one type of songwriter, but you bring a song to the band or you do something and then they actually like point it out like, oh, hey, it's actually, this is what we see as like someone who's like close to you musically. Like, does that make sense?
Where they like analyze for me.
Yeah. And you get like an outsider's, like a close collaborator's outside opinion of who you are as a musician.
Huh. I don't think that's maybe it's gone unsaid.
Yeah.
In the band.
Too heady.
we don't get that heady in that band, but that's something that Ian Fitzgerald and I would talk about, definitely.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's really helpful to have that outside perspective on, I'm still figuring out who I am and what I like to write and what I gravitate toward, and it's really helpful to have somebody who's it's fresh for, and he can see everything all at the same time, and I'm living it in real time, so it gets a little easier to forget.
And Ian is your fiance. Would you call him like your closest collaborator? Your life collaborator.
Yeah, yeah.
And you are about to release an EP?
Yeah, yeah. We just recorded in December. It was just like 2 days of recording where we were just in a room facing each other, and we just did whole live takes.
Sounds like very romantic and intimate.
There were candles.
Oh, that's cool. And that's going to be out digitally.
Yes, only
okay,
digitally
great.
for now.
So going back to Twisted Pine, I wanted to talk about the cover of Dreams by the Cranberries. The Covers album is really fun, and I think the most striking performance is your vocal part on Dreams by the Cranberries, and it seems to be that song has kind of like kicked off the project. And again, one of your band members said this, and I can't remember which one it was. Rachel has the kind of voice that's perfect for that high lilting stuff that Dolores did. And I was wondering if you had a prior connection to Dolores O'Riordan, who sadly passed away about a year ago. If you had a connection to her before you sang that song, or if you feel it now after you've recorded that.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much.
It's crazy. You got to hear it. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I listened to the radio a lot growing up, and that was one of my favorite songs on the radio. And I would always, sing along with it in the back of the car, probably badly. But it really felt, I have a lot of very vivid memories of driving down a particular road, like on Soledad Canyon Road in Santa Clarita with my grandmother. And there's a lot that's attached for me. And actually, it wasn't the thing that kicked off the album. Actually, it was a last-minute addition to the album. We recorded the album in late December, and it was originally a 6-song EP. And we were driving to Baltimore, and we found out about Dolores O'Riordan's death, and we were heartbroken. And so we decided to listen to some of the Cranberries on the way to play the 8x10, and we got stuck on Dreams. We listened to it about 12 times.
Wow.
In the van together. And we were like...
Was that just like a general consensus in the van? Like, again, let's hear it again.
Yeah, because then we started going, wait, we can do this. Because in it, I could hear myself singing that part. Kathleen could hear herself singing that part. And we were like, we should just work it up as a tribute. It wasn't meant to be like a thing that we were going to start doing. And we played it that night. And then we played it the next night. And then we played it the next night. And then we started really trying to tweak it and keep it as true to the original as possible, because we just were so moved by it and we wanted to capture that. And we recorded it, and we added it as a last-minute add-on for the album, and it became the title track. So.
Nice move. Really good.
Thank you.
Cool. And also I want to hear about Ultimate Lady Hang.
Oh, yeah. That started out at Campfire, Club Passim's Campfire, which I think it was the Memorial Day. Yes, it was the Memorial Day Campfire. And there was a songwriting round. It consisted of myself, Katie Martucci from The Ladles, Issa Burke from Lula Wiles, Ellie Buckland also from Lula Wiles, and Aurora Birch, who her name is Emily Moran. She was my roommate, actually, at the time. And we could have just let it be a normal round where we all sing a song and pass it back and forth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to challenge ourselves and add another level of collaboration. So we started planning, a couple rehearsals very close to the round. We didn't have much time for preparation.
As one does.
Right, yeah. But we all were just like, well, we can play these many instruments, all of the instruments. And, I was playing like clarinet and flute and guitar, and Issa was like soloing.
Issa's crazy.
She's so good.
She's insane.
Yeah. And doing all the cool stuff. And I mean, Emily played bass. I played banjo with Katie.
I wonder if there were any fiddles on stage.
Issa played fiddle.
Yeah.
Yes, Issa did play fiddle. Yeah, and then the next time we did it, we added Denny Lavinka from the Western Den and Holly McGarry from Honeysuckle. And that was so much fun. Denny is a keyboardist, so she brought that and a harmonium.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like a fold-up piano that you step on?
Yeah, or that you squeeze.
Oh, like in a yoga class?
I don't know. What yoga class is that?
You haven't been in a yoga class with a harmonium and then they make you sing along?
No, I want to go to that
class. All right,
class.
we'll find one and we'll go.
Yeah, so it just became a really fun outlet for us, a place where we could try new songs. We did a benefit for Planned Parenthood at one point.
So this is very like a loose kind of
very
collaboration.
Loose. Yeah, we get together.
Sorry I interrupted you.
No. 3 days before, we'll get together and work out like complex harmonies and
part of the mission statement.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time to prepare.
Yeah, we really like to stress ourselves out.
That's cool. I hope that you do it again. I get to see it. Maybe on Concert Window.
Yeah, well, we want to record. We want to record, and we want to do it with maybe an all-female cast, like female engineer, female mastering engineer. We just want to do that at some point. I don't know when it will be, but it's
cool.
Definitely something that bubbles up all the time.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about this EP a little bit. At one point, I'm interested in this story about how, like, you were kind of unsure about the direction of the sound and what you wanted it to be like, and then one night you were asked to put together a show at the Lizard Lounge in Cambridge, and I don't know if this was like the Lady Hang where you had 3 days to prepare or anything, but like
definitely one day.
Yeah. So like you threw this thing together. What was going through your mind when you were planning it, and then like everything clicked for you and it made sense what you wanted to do on the EP? Can you explain how like that whole process felt for you?
Yeah, so I met with Daniel Radin from the Novel Ideas and Future Teens. He agreed to help co-produce something with me, and we started meeting and talking about what songs are going to be on the album. And I had 5 songs still at that point, but 4 of them were completely different than what ended up on the final product. And we only started demoing the first track, Shake and Shiver. We only started working on that before things kind of petered out. I really loved the direction that was going in, but then I started to get really distracted from that project with other things like touring and supporting the Twisted Pine album that had just come out, or was just going to come out. And I wasn't really sure what to do with it. The original selection of songs didn't really speak to me. as a group, you know. Like I loved each one individually, but it something just wasn't really making me excited about it. But yeah, like you said, I got a night at the Lizard Lounge, and nobody was around because it was January 2nd. and
Who asked you to put this show together? Billy Beard?
Billy Beard. Yep.
Shout out Billy Beard.
Well, and it was funny. I had been there both nights before with Twisted Pine. We did New Year's Eve, and then we did New Year's Day, and then I did this crazy solo thing the next day on the 2nd. And
I bet it was so fun.
It was really fun. And actually, Billy Beard named the band The Hangovers. That was all him. But I asked Denny Lavinka from the Western Den and Ben Burns from Honeysuckle. I asked them to if they would want to do this gig that I was sure nobody was going to be at, and if they wanted to learn some of my songs. Because Denny and I had written together before, and we had collaborated with the Lady Hang. And we thought it might be fun to kind of reprise that. And I had a set of songs that I felt good about, and I was like, let me just send you what the set list is. And she was like, absolutely, let's do it. And Ben was very on board too. But we only had one day to practice, and that was the day before, not the day before, the day of to practice. So we practiced all day, and we worked everything up. And as it was happening, I just felt like this is the vision that I've been looking for, and I feel good about these 5 songs, and I pinpointed them, and the next day I just knew it kind of all came together at once, and I'm really glad that I didn't rush it, you know, because I'm really happy with the direction that it went.
Yeah, totally. And that's such a crazy dramatic story.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has been great. Is there anything else? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe too much
No,
ground.
I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you coming over and hanging out in my basement.
Thank you, Cindy. Thanks for having me.
Rachel Sumner, so excited to get to know her more and see her perform live in Boston. She tours around with Twisted Pine, which I actually got to see later on that night after I did the interview with Rachel, and they were just fantastic. Lots of great energy, good people. You got to see them. Twisted Pine and everything about that band. I'm on board. Thanks a lot for listening to Basic Folk. I'm your host, Cindy Howes, and also be sure to look into Rachel's new EP, Sing Me an Old Tune, released on Valentine's Day 2019 with her fiancé, Ian Fitzgerald. You can check that out at their joint band camp together. I want to thank our sponsors for Basic Folk. All right, Basic Folk receives support from Lindsay Myers at LMNO Management, who encourages listeners to check out the songwriting duo Mick Dean. You can download singles from their forthcoming EP by going to mcdean.co/basicfolk. And thanks to WIUP in Indiana, Pennsylvania, which airs Basic Folk 2 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. You can listen on 90.1 if you're in the Indiana, PA area, or at their website, wiupfm.org. Thanks to my producer, Laura McCarthy, doing a great job on Basic Folk. We are now remotely working together. And thank you to Alex Stanton of the Pittsburgh band Townspeople for our music on Basic Folk. Thank you, dear listener, and we will talk to you next week. All right, bye.